and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be coming to you guys today with a video that's a little bit different than everything else that I have shared, but it still fits in. It's still kind of stationary content a little bit, but it is actually something that I really enjoy and have kind of been thinking about sharing for a while. So essentially, as you can tell from the title down below, I am discussing my favorite fountain pens and kind of how I got started on my journey with fountain pens. Full disclosure, it can be absolutely terrifying to pick up a fountain pen for the first time. I know that was me for sure, but I actually love them, and it's been almost a year now since I first started writing with a fountain pen, and I went from owning 0 this time last year to having 5 in my possession that I use on kind of like a fairly regular basis. So let's get into it. So I first got into fountain pens because I saw Amber Burns. She's a creator on YouTube as well as on Instagram. She posted online about kind of just the fountain pens and ink that she was writing with, and we do have fairly similar tastes. She does set up bujos every once in a while, and her style is very similar to my style with notebooks in terms of very simple but also very functional. And you know, I was unsure at first. She was writing with the pens, and there was one that I saw that I was just so fascinated by, and then I started looking up how much this pen cost, and I realized that it was more expensive than any pen that I've ever bought in my life. You know, I thought I was doing great with my little like $20 ballpoint pens or like a $50 rollerball that I loved, but she had this pen that cost, it was expensive. I didn't even realize that they made pens that were that expensive. So I was just kind of like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I went to a new stationery shop in Toronto called Wonder Pens, looking for, I should say new to me, they've been around for years, but I went to Wonder Pens looking for just regular stationery supplies, and I ended up picking up my first fountain pen on that trip. And it was really simple. I actually picked up 2 of them. It was the Platinum Preppy in extra fine, which is 02, as well as the 05 one. I actually do not know where my 05 Platinum Preppy is currently, but essentially it's just like a really cheap plastic pen. This cost $5. And since then I've picked up other ones as well. I also have an 03 in this yellow color, which I haven't opened yet, but essentially all it is it's kind of like a plastic Bic pencil or pen, I guess you could call it. Like the regular one, you could buy a pack of like 10 for $10 online, but in fountain pen form. So it does have a cartridge in it. You can write with it like normal. And this was kind of the gateway for me. I came home, got it inked up immediately. So there is kind of a cartridge that comes inside of it as well that you just pop in, and then it lets the ink flow through the rest of the pen. And I was intrigued. I started writing with it. I realized that it was actually very easy. I didn't like how the pen wrote in general. I just found that it was a little bit scratchy. I didn't love kind of like the feel of the pen against the paper, which is a really big thing for me. But I also acknowledge the fact that I don't like those cheap pens that you could buy like a 10-pack of that every office has. So it stands to reason that I would also not like the fountain pen equivalent of those pens. You can call me a bit of a snob if you want, but I just knew that. So from there, I wrote with it for a while, and I started paying attention to fountain pens a little bit more online, and I discovered the Kaweco Sport, or the Kaweco Mini Sport, in this iridescent color. So this was the first kind of like big girl fountain pen that I ever purchased. I absolutely loved it. It does come in this iridescent. It's a mini pen, so it is listed as like a pocket pen, and it has this really pretty iridescent color to it. I went with extra fine because I do like kind of like thin writing when I write. And when you buy a fountain pen, they usually come with, some of them I should say, come with a cartridge in it as well for ink. So this came with a blue ink cartridge inside of it. I'm also very particular about the color of ink that I write with. I prefer black, so I also picked up the Kaweco ink cartridges, and I thought I was just going to go with this. So in the world of fountain pens, there's a whole bunch of different inks that you could buy, and like bottled ink that you could purchase, and the whole nine, and they're beautiful. They have different colors. Some of them have like sparkles in them. It's just a really beautiful and intriguing thing to see. However, as someone who was just entering the world of fountain pens, I was a little bit intimidated by the thought of having like a pot of ink and then having to fill my pen with it and kind of figuring that out. So enter the cartridges. I purchased them for the Kaweco. I wrote with it for a while. Once the cartridge was done, popped a new one in. It was super easy, super simple. And then from there, I ended up going with Lamy Safari. So the Lamy Safari is kind of like an iconic pen. I ended up picking it up in this pink. Honestly, these two pens, like the Kaweco Mini and the Lamy Safari, are like, in Canada, they're like $30, $35 each. So they are fairly inexpensive when it comes to a pen. And considering the fact that one of my favorite kind of like traditional writing instruments, I have a retro 1951 rollerball. Considering the fact that runs about $40 to $50 for the pen, this was still cheaper than some of the pens that I was buying previously. So I ended up picking up the second fountain pen that I bought was the Lamy Safari. I did need something that was a little bit bigger because the Mini is kind of like a pocket pen size, whereas the Safari is more like your traditional pen size. I loved it. This turned into my everyday pen as well. This was an extra fine point, and you know, I was using cartridges in it and I loved it. Soon though, I actually struggled to find cartridges that fit the Lamy pen. So while I had cartridges for my Kaweco, I did not have anything for the Lamy, and it was becoming difficult for me to find and source them. They were always sold out, or they didn't bring them in very often. And when this pen ran out of ink, I started lamenting the loss of the pen. I would go to reach for it and realize that I didn't have any ink in it, I couldn't use it. So I went back to the stationery store, I did my research online, and I saw that you can purchase a converter for it. So the converter actually is made by the brand. It is made to fit the pen, and essentially it is so that you can ink your pen with ink that comes in an inkwell. So I purchased a converter. I'm not going to take it out because it is inked and in here right now. And while I was there, I also picked up a bottle of ink. So this was the first bottle of ink that I ever purchased. I got the Lamy T53 crystal ink in black, so really boring essentially, but it was what I needed to convert this pen from cartridges to ink. I enjoyed it. My kitchen definitely looked a bit like a Jackson Pollock. I was so nervous kind of filling the pen with ink and getting it to go, but it worked. And I have been using that for about a couple months. When my Kaweco ran out of the cartridge that was in it, I got a converter for the Kaweco as well, and then I started putting the black Lamy ink in it as well. So same ink in the two pens initially. Currently I do have it inked with different ink. This one is still, the Lamy Safari has the Diamine Best Wishes ink in it, which I got a sample size of it, and the Kaweco has the Diamine Hope Pink in it, which I also had a sample of. I really like this kind of color, to be honest. I might actually buy a full bottle of the Diamine Hope Pink because I think it's so pretty. And yeah, essentially that was my introduction into bottled inks. from there, I ended up purchasing my third and fourth fountain pens. So I actually got both of these on the same day. I was eyeing the Swibby collection for a really long time, and they do these beautiful pens that come across that are made for like everyday writing. They are a little bit more expensive than the Lamy and the Kaweco, but they are these very durable kind of everyday pens, and I knew that I wanted to buy a pen from a different brand. So one of my goals is, as I purchase pens, I do want to kind of purchase from different manufacturers, figure out which ones I really love, ideally have one from all of the major ones. So Swibby was my next bet. So around Christmas, they announced that they were doing a cream and rose gold version, which is this one here. It is absolutely beautiful to me. I ended up picking this one up in an extra fine. Let me double check. Yes, I picked this up in an extra fine nib as well, because I knew that it was a pen that I would probably use pretty consistently and almost daily. So I wanted to make sure that it still fit in that extra fine range that I love. And the difference with this pen is that you have to fill it differently than how you fill kind of the other pens. So with the Lamy and the Kaweco, you can just dip it in to an inkwell and you kind of like piston fill, so you like pull up the back of it and it sucks the ink in through the nib of the pen into the into like the inkwell or the converter. With these pens, you can also use a syringe, which I learned if you're getting sample sizes of inks, you're usually only getting like 1 or 2 milliliters of ink, so you can use a syringe and kind of like draw it up into the ink into the syringe and then insert it directly into the converter so that you can use your sample ink in the pen. When it comes to the Swibbies, it's all like one internal mechanism, and it is a piston fill. So you end up twisting the back of the pen to suck the ink in through the nib, and there is no option to use a syringe or an eyedropper to fill the ink into the pen. So for this one, I did the cream and rose gold is currently inked just with the same Lamy Black Safari ink. Like I said, I wanted this to be kind of like an everyday pen, and I'm just writing with it at all times. So I decided to stick a little bit simple, and quite honestly, I think I will continue inking this pen with fairly neutral colored ink. So black, blue, I might venture to other colors, but I do think I really want the colors of the pen itself to shine as opposed to the ink in the pen. And this is a Swibby Eco Rose Gold. Compared to what I picked up that day as well was the Swibby Eco Tea. So I got this in this beautiful, completely transparent pen. So I decided to go with this one over the other colors that they had because I wanted a pen that let my ink shine. So like I mentioned earlier, there are a ton of inks that come with sparkles in it, or they're very kind of like seasonally appropriate and stuff like that. And I wanted a pen that could showcase the ink. With a clear inkwell, it just made sense. I want to see what's in my pen at all times. I want it to almost be like a piece of art as well while it's out on my desk. So enter the fully transparent pen. When I was in the store, the girl pointed out that it comes in the Swibby Eco and the Swibby Eco Tea. The difference with the tea is that it has a little bit more of a triangular grip at the top, so you can hold it a little bit better if needed. I don't really notice the difference between the two. It is extremely subtle, but I can understand how for some people they may need that grip just to kind of feel comfortable holding the pen. And the biggest difference with this pen is I actually opted for a broader nib. So I specifically had the conversation with her about how I always buy extra fine nibs, and I did want to venture into the world of fancy inks. And she pointed out that a 1.1 or a broad nib or a 1.1 would actually be better for showing off those inks and the sparkles in the ink, as opposed to like an extra fine, which would not necessarily have the room when you're writing to display that on the page. So we went with the 1.1. I started writing with it. It was not as bad as I thought it would actually be. I actually love this pen for like headers. You see it in my like notebook all the time. I'll write titles with it. I'll underline with it, things I want to stand out. So the 1.1 is growing on me, which is a little bit surprising. And I currently have it inked with the Diamine Gingerbread, which is this like really pretty brown color. I also got that as part of a sample pack that I purchased. So I did, you can fill a Swibby pen with a sample ink, but it is very nerve-wracking, I will say that, because you do need to get your sample at the right angle. In this little vial, you need to get your pen at the right angle as well, and then you need to be kind of ambidextrous and like hold the vial and the pen and then twist the back at the same time. And honestly, I did it over top of a plate just to make sure that I didn't get ink everywhere and spilling it, but we got all the ink in the pen and we are loving it. Don't know if I'd necessarily do it again, but the pen is fully inked with a sample of the Diamine Gingerbread, which I am loving. So that essentially is all the fountain pens that I currently own. I do of course have my eyes on some other ones. That pen that I mentioned earlier that I am absolutely obsessed with is the Pilot Vanishing Point. It is a retractable fountain pen, and I do think that it is actually the only one that is currently on the market. It acts just like your regular retractable pen, except it has that fountain pen nib in it. It is $200 in Canada, and I am so specific about the one that I want. It does come in like a silver, a shiny black. I believe there's a blue, a white version of it, but I really want a matte black Pilot Vanishing Point. So jet pens, wonder pens, Pilot, if you are seeing this, feel free to send me one. I would be forever grateful if I could be gifted one, but I'm also perfectly fine with purchasing one. And then I am also really have my eye on some of the Esterbrook pens, as well as the Diamond and Sailor. So I just think that they're so pretty. They're so, Esterbrook does these pens that have a lot of kind of design on them, or they'll do specialty ones. I know they did a year of the dragon one recently. That was absolutely stunning. They are work of art pens, and I would love to be able to have one on my desk. But until then, I am of course very happy with the collection that I currently have. So yeah, that is essentially my journey into the world of fountain pens. Please, please, please let me know in the comments if you have written with a fountain pen before, which fountain pens you have, or even if you are, which ones you have your eye on. Like, are you also a Pilot Vanishing Point girl or person who really, really wants one? Let me know. But until next time, have a great day.